There's us, live at just after 7 o'clock. This is Molby On The Spot. I'm Trev Downey. I'm here in my field in beautiful rural Ireland, or Anfield as it appears. And I'm joined, of course, by your friend of mine, the Liverpool legend, Mr. Jan Molby. Good evening, Jan.
Good evening, Trevor. How are you? I mean, it's been one heck of a week.
Could we get any more incident into this week? And it's, I think, predominantly good. I think the only people who are going to be a bit bent out of shape about anything this week are people who have that little part of them, like I spoke about, that I have in me, where you don't want to see good things happening to other clubs. But let's get there when we get there. And there's only one story to start with. That is the Virgil van Dijk contract. Very curious to hear what you make of this. We kind of knew from a couple of weeks back now at this stage. And then when Mo signed, I think there were all these kind of hints getting dropped by Virgil himself, by Mo in a post-match interview. So we knew for sure, anyone who was a bit iffy about it, for at least a week. And then it drops a little bit earlier than everyone thought. You know, people were expecting it might happen on a Friday. But here we go on Thursday with the news. When you saw it confirmed, obviously the shock element isn't the same, or the surprise element isn't the same. But I think it's a thing that has to be celebrated at the same time, Jan, isn't it? Because I feel like now, with Mo and Virgil in situ for next season, it feels like there's no reason or excuse for it to be called a transitional season.
No, absolutely not. I think we spoke about it last week, didn't we, Trevor? The importance of Mo and Virgil staying. Obviously, we won't have to spend that money on replacing them. But also, as you rightly said, it kind of takes care of what can we expect of next season. Well, we expect something similar to this season in terms of what we could deliver, what the others deliver. You know, we can't influence, isn't it? But we expect, again, Liverpool to be able to be running at certainly mid-80s in terms of points, 85 points plus. And that would be good enough to compete, isn't it? And in terms of being to attract other people and be able to convince them that things are still good, I feel it's important that you big boys. So I generally think FSG gets a lot of criticism, but they're pretty good. And I think it's like they more or less manage to keep players that we want to keep going. You know, and that part. I think all years there's been. We had this last time with Mo as well, didn't we? We're unsure what he was going to say, but they managed to get on, isn't it? In their way. You know, like what time for that, isn't it? As we discussed, isn't it, that this situation got out of hand a little bit in shop. The club could no longer hold this. You know, so they had to be patient. And I think in the end, I think they played the blind. I have to say to them, I think they played the. You know, instead of being for, you know, feeling you having to do it right now because of the fan base or the media, isn't it? Kind of play the way that they wanted to put them there. So instead of you, Trevor, you got Virgil.
Yeah. I mean, I get all sorts of input, because we do a transfer show on the channel, Jan, that people love it because people love transfers. It gets a lot of talking going, and it generates a lot of opinion to push back against anything we put out. And one of the things that came out in the immediate aftermath was Jonathan Northcroft spoke in the Sunday Times, I think it was, in his article, about now that it looks likely that the two deals are going to get done, and this is before Virgil was confirmed, that, you know, it was one of these kind of wet blanket articles, because it was talking about how that's going to eat up considerable amount of funds, and now, unless there are outgoings, there probably won't be a whole lot of incomings. And it felt very much like one of those things that gets rolled out via the mainstream, by some of the major journalists to manage expectations, which is, you know, a classic trick across the board in business and government, and we've seen it increasingly in football. But I don't know necessarily that the sums work on that. in terms of the extra the two lads are going to be getting paid. We didn't really get a huge amount of details around Mo. We know Mo was already earning anything up to $500,000 a week with all his extra bits and bobs. And we are being told now, Jan, that it's up to 400,000 for Virgil. And, you know, a fella your age or my age hears that and you just shake your head. It makes no fucking sense. It's like, what? You know, you've got to, you do a couple of months, you're set for years. Most people with that kind of money, you do a couple of years, it's generational wealth for your family. It's wild. But parking that for a second, did you hear any of this kind of mumbling already, or is that a separate thing to you? Do you think that doesn't necessarily or shouldn't necessarily impact on the recruitment that we know is very much needed?
I'd be as if that is the case. You know, I think that, and of course this is not an official line, just think that we more or less get towards that this is going to be someone for Liverpool, isn't it? This is kind of the way it's been planned for top this summer ago. We're going to try and this next team who's going to be able to get the top for the next 5-6 years. How much more final outlay is there from Virgil? It surely can't be that. Surely can't be that much that if we need to, the sale of one of our reserve players that might never be in the first team squad should be able to take care of that. There will also be some bonuses that will to play because of the league from some of us. There's also the new kit deal with Adidas, isn't it? So the only thing I will say is that I have no history of John Lawcroft being in a little click or people get a little nudge, but I can understand why he would, because he's a very respectful journalist. So I would think at right this moment in time that there wouldn't be a lot in that. You know, I think the plans are in place that they want to do things. We the thing is, Trevor, we know how they want to do business, don't they? You know, we talk about the strikers and possibly most of the strikers being up for sale. Not that we're going to sell all 4 of them, but we want to see what's out there, who's prepared to give us some money before we can go and do what we want to do, isn't it? So we know how the club does business, isn't it? So, but I think if we look back last season, Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes didn't do a lot apart from getting roughly 60 million for Van den Berg and Carvalho to Brentford and the young boy Clark to Australia. And I think that's good business. I think they've proven again that they can get top dollars for players that we don't want. So if I was Liverpool, I wouldn't be overturned right this moment in time. I think the plan are that, and I think that comes from Arne, really. Arne couldn't have been any clearer, could he, Trevor, in terms of what do I think of the squad? You know, these are the 14.5 players I trust, isn't it? You know, surely they've all noticed that. I'm sure they spoke to Arne and gone, why do you play these same players every week? And well, because these are the players who's best suited the way I want to play. These are the players that I trust, isn't it? But I need more players. I probably need another 5 players, certainly 2 of them for now, and 3 maybe squad players for the future. So get it sorted, Richard.
Yeah, you've you've kind of nailed it on the head there for me, because if anyone will have noticed what Arne thinks about his squad, it will be the players. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
How many times in this show have we spoken about that? You've given us the insight about what the back rooms are like, what the dressing rooms like, what the behind the scenes is like with lads who are not in the team, and they talk about it amongst themselves. And I have this theory, yeah. And by the way, listen, I don't know, there's a couple of lads in the comments reckon that there's a bit of static coming off your mic. I don't know if there's anything rubbing off it there, but just said I'd say it to you, or if there's anything touching off your microphone. Is there by any chance there? No. Okay. Cool. Just some people thought they could hear a bit of interference. Looking around the squad then, because again, I'd like to get your opinion on this in terms of things that we have to address. It's been glaringly obvious for the last couple of games, and you know, kind of really pointedly so. The left back thing is starting to come into sharp relief, and I had a theory that I floated out on the transfer show last night, and I wouldn't mind getting your take on it. We saw Andy Robertson have an absolutely horrific outing and then not start, and Tsimikas start in the last match. And then Tsimikas get hooked very early and Andy Robertson come on. And the first thing people were saying is, managing minutes and stuff like that. And I'm thinking Tsimikas is fit. There's one game a week. This makes no sense. That's not managing minutes. No. So there's only a couple of things I think that could be going on there. One is that the manager really doesn't fancy him and he doesn't want him on the pitch any more than he has to be on. Or two, he felt it was really important to rehabilitate Andy Robertson, which, if that was the case, that didn't go well. So I'm wondering where you ended up landing on the left back situation.
So I've ended up in this position, Trevor, and we spoke about this, and we feel the need for a left back. And I've landed where I'm thinking that Tsimikas is the one we're going to try and move on, and we're going to buy competition for Andy Robertson. And I think that'll be really interesting how we view that competition in terms of what can that new player expect from day one, because it's very, very difficult. Sometimes, and I'm not suggesting this is what we should do, but sometimes when you have key senior players, and Robertson is one of them, he's much more than just a great footballer. He's also a great voice in the dressing room. Sometimes, if they're at your club, they have to play because otherwise they could be very difficult situations to manage, isn't it? So my feeling right this moment in time is that Tsimikas is the one we're going to try and move on. We're going to try and buy some competition for the next 12 months for Andy Robertson. And as I said before, I'll just say it once more. It'll be interesting to see what type of competition we're viewing. Are we potentially looking at a 21, 22-year-old who got greatness, who can come in and play, and if he has a little struggle, the jersey might be a bit heavy to start with, whatever, then Rob was always there. Isn't it? But that's where I'm at the moment. Whereas, had you asked me 6-8 months ago, I would have thought, because of his sort of standing, Andy Robertson, and you think that, and I think he would be honest enough if you sat down with him and go, what is it that you want now? He said, well, I want to play, I want to be able to play. So if that's the case, then he would also have insurance from the manager, wouldn't he, Andy Robertson? If I'm doing okay, even if we should bring somebody else in, it's still a fair fight, and that's where I ended up, is that we're going to try and make it a fair fight for the next 12 months, and then obviously time catches up with all of us, and then it's time for the new board to maybe step in.
So with all that said, then where do you sit with the will not go away ever rumor about Milos Kerkez, who's clearly theoretically at least plug and play, in that he's had quite a few games now for Bournemouth, approaching 60 games, I think, or something like that over 2 seasons. And he's looking like a kind of eye-catching footballer. I don't know if it was you or someone else mentioned to me before, and I was researching him there yesterday, and I discovered he was literally caught the eye of Paolo Maldini. It's a good sign. And went on then and played with another Arne-linked club in Alkmaar. So there's quite a lot going on there that would suggest that guy might be the thing. Except the thing is, we keep hearing this 40, 45, up to 50 million type number. And Man City pay that kind of money for fullbacks. Liverpool don't. Nobody else does. So what you're saying would suggest it's not going to be someone as high profile as Kerkez. It might be more of a project player. Would that be fair to say? Is that how I'm interpreting what you're saying?
Yeah, probably, Trevor. And I'm with you on this. And I have to guess a little bit here, Trevor. And I don't know if you spoke about this on one of the other podcasts that you do, but we tend not to spend an awful lot of money on defenders. We haven't paid for the defender apart from Ramsey, the young boy Ramsey from Aberdeen, was it? I think before him, Konate was probably the last one that we paid for, so we kind of want to try and avoid that. So I have no names, Trevor, because I always think that you're trying to link Liverpool with these players, and sometimes it's a little bit lazy, Yeah, Kerkez is a good player. take nothing away from that. Is his profile right for Liverpool? It appears so. And then, of course, the big link is Richard Hughes. And would Richard Hughes have an insight on his contract? Because there's one thing Liverpool love as a football club, it's a clause, isn't it? You know, he has a release clause, we just go and pay that, and he's ours, isn't it? So I don't necessarily think that it's him. Give you a name, Trevor. I can't. This is kind of also what I like about how Liverpool do things. And I'm absolutely sure that they would have a short list of maybe 3 or 4 left backs, and probably 2 of them that we'd go, who's that? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, and there are names floating about, but like you say, there's nothing that is anything tangible to it. If we got a Night Nuri or a Hato, people will be happy with those. But again, I think it's going to come down to the arrangement that Robertson feels he has with the manager. I spoke about this last night in terms of, I think people will be incredibly naive if they were to think that Andy Robbo won't be completely bent out of shape if he's not number one. And, you know, I was talking about the arrogance of Kerkez during the week, where he did this little tweet where he said, like, you know, he was bigging himself up. And, you know, whereas I think confidence is super, I think it's not super, it's essential for anyone who wants to succeed. Public displays of confidence, I'm not really a fan of that, never have been. Not when it's egregious. Quiet confidence is great. But Andy Robertson is a guy who's just burning with pride. He's just one of those guys. And we played an interview from, I think he was away in Scotland, Judy, and he was asked about this idea of, you know, Liverpool being linked with left backs. It was probably around the last transfer window. And his take on it was very, very clear. He spoke about how he was lucky, and then he corrected himself. Well, it wasn't really luck to have played for one of the best clubs in the world for 8 years, you know, to be the starting left back at Liverpool and so on and so forth. He's hugely proud of that. And again, this is where your experience comes in here, man. Having been around professional footballers of similar character, having gone through the sort of process of, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to be number one pick here yourself. Everyone, it happens to all footballers. It strikes me as highly unlikely that Robertson would go quietly. And I think, and we may be about to see this, Jan, if and when the league gets done, I think there's quite a few lads that stories will start to emerge about who have felt the cold wind around them because Arne's not been that fond of them. I feel, for example, the minute the league is won, and please God that will be soon, I think you're going to hear Darwin Núñez stories every week, every second day. I think you're going to hear stories about disgruntled Harvey Elliott, and none of them you couldn't criticize any of them. Once the job is done, you couldn't criticize any of them because they are really on the outs. But Robertson is clearly the favorite of the manager, and yet is he? That's where I'd be with it, you know. What do you think about that guy's personality accepting a squad role?
Well, I find that difficult. Had he been 2 or 3 years older, I might have been able to see some mileage. But the thing is that you're highly competitive. Andy Robertson is a great club man until he's not, you know, until you kind of bypass. And you said before, I would probably say that towards the back end of my Liverpool career, I didn't play a lot, but I always had a chance of playing because I could play in a few positions. So if I have to compare it with anyone, it'd probably Ronnie Whelan. When time sort of moved on from Ronnie, and Ronnie had been like, oh, wow, Ronnie's a great club man, he's been here forever. But the moment that he felt that, you just called it yourself win, the moment he felt the cold win, he goes, this is not why I play football, you know.
Yeah.
I play to play, and I have 100% that Robertson would be the same, and I'm 100% that he ain't going to take lying down, not being involved. He'd be quite happy if the manager goes, fair fight, the best man plays, and he'll give that real go. That's for sure, isn't it? But these highly competitive athletes, Trevor, you know, they're great to have on your side until it's like you're with me or you're against me, you know. And for the majority of the time, they're with you. But sometimes things are against you, isn't it? And that's when that comes into you, and you go, nah, I'll go somewhere else, and I'll play football somewhere else, isn't it? So Robertson, he's been great during his time at Liverpool, isn't it? And I just hope that they find a way of being able to manage that situation.
Yeah, I think Robertson's one of those lads who eventually you see it yourself. You've been you've donned many a jersey in Legends games, and when I introduce you every week, I don't use that word lightly. A lot of people use the word lightly. We've seen several Liverpool legends who would be players of not quite the same profile, but I don't think anyone could really argue that Andy Robertson, having been there for the Klopp era, front and centre, and a key performer and a really inspirational performer week in, week out, I think that guy's earned his already at this stage, earned his Liverpool legend tag. And, you know, you go back through the era, and of course there were great left backs. But I remember doing the sums on this. We were putting together an all-time Liverpool 11. I think I got you in on this just to annoy you with it as well. And because I'm the age I am, I had actually placed, and this is where we're going next, I placed Trent in there because the dude was the best in the world. And maybe you know, maybe still is, probably still is at his best. Of course he is. And it was a real wrangle about who would go in at left back. And there's been some amazing players. And I think, you know, people just because they wanted to represent him, some people put in Emlyn Hughes there. Some people thought, well, Alan Kennedy's won the lot. And he was such a clutch player for Liverpool as well in big games. I ended up putting Steve Nicol in there because I didn't see a way of not including Nicol because he was such an important part of that squad that you were part of. But I think Robertson's got a shout of being included in some people's all-time 11s. That kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, and absolutely, and rightly so. You know, and he's also one of those. The story goes well with Liverpool, doesn't he? You know, his background. I mean, you just mentioned people like Emlyn Hughes and whatever, Steve Nicol. The background of these guys, you know, where they come from and how they fought their way. You know, I mean, one thing is you have to start your career somewhere. And obviously, Andy started up in the lower leagues in Scotland. And loads of people have that story. But what I always felt with Andy Robertson is that when he went to Hull and he got relegated, and I remember doing one of the games just before they got relegated, and I said, well, there's a couple of players here that the Premier League won't allow to play in the Championship, and that's the left back and the centre half. The centre half was Harry Maguire. But of course, they did. You know, they played in the Championship, which for me was unbelievable that they were allowed to play there. So he had to fight his way back again out the Championship, back into the Premier League with Hull, isn't it? Then having to prove it all over again because obviously the last time he was there, it wasn't enough to catch anyone's eye, you know. So he had to do it all over again, isn't it? So yeah, it's a great story, isn't it? And then he comes to Liverpool, the determination. I think he's just had a look around when he arrived in Anfield. He's gone, this is what I wanted. This is all worth it now. So now I've got to make the most of this again. So it's another battle, isn't it? And yeah, he's achieved that. It's fair to say that, you know, arguably he was certainly in the top 3 best left backs in the world for the period of time. That in itself is incredible high praise. For sure.
The elephant in the room is the lad on the far side that I've briefly mentioned, and I just want to take it in here while we're still on the defence and Virgil, and we'll wrap it up with 1 or 2 takes on you from you on Virgil. But the quiet, the silence around Trent is all the evidence you need that this deal is about to get done. And yet, the longer it goes on, there's all these whispers about why and why it hasn't been announced or why there's nothing official or whatever. In terms of, you know, strong rumors, but I think there were enough at the time for it to be safe enough in everyone's minds that it's likely to happen. And some people were saying that the club wanted to get the contracts announced with the other 2 before they did anything or said anything. So I buy kind of into all of that. I'm very much of the opinion that the Trent heads off still. I think it's probably pipe dream to think anything otherwise at this stage, given his silence on it as much as anything else. But if we need a left back, good God, we clearly need a right back now. And it's going to be really interesting. Recruitment-wise, there's 2 positions straight away in the defence. And that's assuming that the rumours about Quansah to Newcastle or wherever are not true, that the rumours about Joe Gomez going are not true, that Ibu Konate is granted the deal that he wants, which is I think it's about 150% increase from 80,000 to 200,000. And, you know, in the greater scheme of things, he's obviously worth that. So there's a lot of addressing that to be done in the defence. But let's take a quick look at the right back situation. And you are never going to replace like for like now, because there's no other player like Trent in the world, not really. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, this is where our boys, our you know, eggheads behind the scenes are really going to have to earn their crust, Jan. They're going to have to go out here and get us a nice balance between one lad who raids and one lad who holds the shop, or two lads who can do the lot, or whatever it happens to be. But it's going to be a big ask, this recruitment window.
Yeah, I mean, one thing for sure, we're not after like for like, Trevor.
No,
we're not looking for that type of a right back. That's for sure. It's more likely it's going to be a bit like Bradley. Bradley's a carrier, isn't he? He carries the ball. Trent passes the ball, and it's two completely different things, isn't it? So again, where do we go? And again, you know, not everybody, but people are talking about Jeremy Frimpong at Leverkusen. I just couldn't see him being defensively strong enough to play in the Premier League. He's more of a wing back. He's more of almost like a right winger, isn't he? So I can't see that. We're after a good technical footballer who has a lot of defensive teeth. I think that's what we're after, isn't it? But I think Arne's got a feel of how we can play, what we're capable of with our front three and with our midfield and whatever. So we want somebody there who's technically a good footballer, but probably strength is defending more than being able to do what Trent can do with the ball, isn't it? So, you know, again, where do we go? I really don't know. But we do need somebody, because having one is not enough. And also Bradley's body is probably still adjusting to football at this level. And, you know, it might just be a case where next season he might have to play more games at that level than he's ever done. I'd be interested to see how his body copes.
Yeah, someone ran the numbers on it. I think even just the eye test would tell you he's been available for somewhere around half of the fixtures, which is not, you know, it's turned into a cliche, but the first time I heard it said was by one of our own here, Simon Brundish. The best ability is availability. It's a great, it's a good one. And, you know, when you think of someone like Mo Salah or Luis Suarez or someone like that, those guys, you just can't break them. They're always there. And, you know, when you ally that to talent as well, that's the dream tick. And I think Bradley has the talent. It would just be lovely to, as you say, hopefully he will adjust. An awful lot of lads as younger men do have those periods where it takes them a while for that to happen. In terms of Virgil, just a last word on this, because it has been such a saga. It'd be daft not to get a take from you. We did see a couple of high-profile errors from, actually, just before the contract got signed the last couple of weeks. Moments where, you know, you can see them doing the rounds on all sorts of social media, and people having a great old laugh as he's doing air kicks or whatever, and kind of moments that we don't associate with this incredibly cool, suave Rolls Royce of a footballer. Now, that said, until the contract got done with Mo, it was diminishing returns from him as well. I think it's different in that I feel like we were starving Mo Salah off the football. And in the first half of the last match, Jan, we supplied Mo Salah with the football. Amazingly, it worked. Who'd have thought it? Seeing as it's been our freaking game plan all year. But with Van Dijk, I feel like, you know, it's so atypical to see any errors from him. He strikes me as the kind of lad who can play for a long time yet. It would not surprise me to see another year or two being added on to this 2-year contract, because we've seen precedent of fellas who look after themselves and who play where he plays, and they can play 37, 38, 39. Maldini's still going at 40. You know, it can happen. And lads have done it recently in the Premier League. So when you think about him going forward and longevity, that's kind of what I meant. Him and Mo can do it at a high level for another 2 years. So already we're out the gate looking good. So we sign a kid like Huyson from Bournemouth or something like that, or we sign an up-and-comer, playing alongside Virgil van Dijk is the thing that helps everybody get better. We've seen it with all our own footballers over the years. That's the thing that's most encouraging for me, that he's going to be around to probably train in his ultimate replacement, to bring on someone alongside him that will really, be able to make the step up then. That's exciting. But just watching Virgil, just sweeping up around and doing Virgil bits for another couple of years, it gives us such an edge on other teams. We focus on his mistakes, Jan, only because they're so rare.
Yeah, and it will always be like that, won't it? When he makes a mistake, and of course with the contract situation and with his age and whatever, and people are jumping all over that, isn't it? But I think Virgil's just kind of gone to the club, get this contract sorted, because otherwise I'm going to carry on playing like this, and this is not what you want to see. You know what I mean? So, obviously, but there's been stats about Virgil, hasn't it, in the last sort of 48 hours, isn't it? And the defensive stats are just ridiculous. In terms of, he never gets dribbled past. I know never, but it feels like he never gets dribbled past, isn't it? And when we talk about how long can you play for, again, there's no guarantee. But I look at that boy who left Chelsea last summer, Thiago Silva, and I always think that genuine world class, that boy, and so is Virgil. If he could play in the Premier League and look really good, even at 38, without the physical presence of Virgil van Dijk, without playing in a team as good as Liverpool, I can't see no reason why Virgil shouldn't be able to carry on at least for another 3 or 4 years.
Completely agree.